Alright, it's time for another update and forecast on the Gifford fire. I actually just gave an update and forecast about 5 minutes ago, but some new information came in. I probably should have known to check Twitter before I went live, but it does provide a little bit more nuance to the forecast than what I felt I had said in my previous video. So that one's now deleted and we're going to start from scratch So this was one of the videos that I saw, which, I mean, we did know that there was a lot of smoke coming off of the fire, but one of the things we didn't know was whether it was due to firing operations, where they're purposely putting fire on the ground to clear out some of the fuels as a way to actually fight fire with fire, or if the fire was actually kind of going out of control and creating some of its own smoke. So I checked Twitter, or I guess it's called X now, and this was a very helpful post. If you're on there, this is probably a good account to follow and check before you do videos, if you're like me. But it says, looks like the Gifford fire has spotted overlines and into the Santa Lucia wilderness area. This is on the northwest side of the fire. One spot was mapped near the high mountain lookout. Unsure of exactly what the plan is now, copters are dropping in the area. So we already looked at the video of it. This is the map that shows perhaps that little spot down there where burning embers picked up and then it is dropped. And then the concern there would be that that is outside of where they had done some of those firing operations. So then that could lead to new growth. And I mean, if that's the area that we're looking at in this video, then it looks like that spot has clearly established, although it's hard to tell whether this would be the spot or whether this would be the fire itself just burning in some very heavy fuels. Perhaps we could turn it back to 6 hours, and that does give us a little bit more of a picture. When it first starts, it does look like it starts fairly small, and then over the last 6 hours gets more established in those dry fuels. We get up into the hottest part of the day where you're in the mid-90s to potentially even triple digits. Relative humidity drops down into the teens, and then the fire takes off. So that's some information we didn't have when I was doing this video earlier. I guess maybe one of the first things I should have said, though, is where this fire is, just in case you're not a local to the area. We have the Central Coast right here, and then we have San Luis Obispo, about 17 miles to the east of San Luis Obispo. We have the northwestern side of this fire, and that has been where it has been the most active recently, and it sounds like that is where it is active right now. One other thing we could do is, I saw in the comments somebody asked where's that map from, and they posted the CAL FIRE website. And the reason I had checked this website, but the reason I hadn't seen it is you have to zoom way in here, and then I wish there was a way to turn off the evacuation orders because it makes it kind of hard to see. Oh, there it worked. So there you can perhaps see that spot that we might be seeing in that camera shot right there, but where the fire seems to be fairly active right now. And then if we zoom out, I think the other map is going to show us that firing operation better than that one does. So I mentioned that it's mostly the northwestern side of the fire that we're looking at. I think the best way to understand that is by first looking at the acreage. Should update that number. It's up to 131,000 acres. But the reason I always take that number with a grain of salt is because you might see the number going up, but the number doesn't exactly matter as much as where is that new growth happening. Because if you're down on the southern side of the fire, you haven't had any growth near you in the last few days. So even if the number goes up, you don't have as much reason to be concerned. Whereas when we look at the fire progression map, you can see that a lot of that growth in the last few days has been on that northwestern side. So just explaining how this works, the blue is where the fire started on August 1st, and then you can notice it seemed to grow in all directions for a few days, but then most recently that's where you have that red, which is August 12th, the orange, which is August 11th. So some growth still obviously in the northwest, but everywhere else on the fire, you're not really seeing any of that orange or red. So if you're not in the northwest, pretty good news on the fire. And then when it comes to the containment number, it's 37%. That's where there's also some good news for almost the entire southern half or bottom half of this fire. It's almost completely contained down here. And where we do have some red on this very southern edge, is just mostly smoldering, and it sounds like they're going to get in there and that'll be black pretty soon. Clearly well contained on the eastern side where it bumps into the Sierra or the Madre fire burn scar that happened earlier this year. The reason for that is the Madre fire would have cleared out these fuels so that by the time the Gifford fire got to it, there's no more fuels. So then it stops the fire in its tracks. And the reason I wanted to point that out, along with the fact that northwestern side, obviously in the red because it's uncontained. But the reason I wanted to point that out about the Madre fire is that's actually what they've been doing on this northwestern side to try to contain this fire and keep it from spreading too much in this area. So one clear spot where this is visible is that finger that stretches up right there. At first glance, you might think that's a weird way for the fire to grow. Why did it do that? But what they are doing is actually purposely putting fire on the ground and then allowing it to burn back towards the major blaze. So then when the front of the fire itself moves down to the south, it just bumps into where all the fuels have already been cleared out and it stops in its tracks. Now, with that being said, I actually did mention this in the video that I deleted because we got some new information, but the danger of where you could think everything is nicely contained here is spot fires. And that's what we saw happen on the Dixie fire, where they had what you could call a catcher's mitt around the entire northern side of the fire. Then a burning ember jumped over it, and then the fire took off 15 miles in one day. Good news, at least on the Gifford fire, we don't have anything like the winds that we had on the Dixie fire when it went 15 miles in one day, so I'm not expecting that to happen. But we are now seeing a spot fire, and it's not showing up on that map, so I'll just remind you, seems to be on this very northwestern side. Right there, you see that little spot? That would be perhaps somewhere right around there. And if we want to take a different way of looking at this, you can kind of get in here. Seems like the spot has developed there. I mean, one concern about this is that during the overnight hour, so right now we have more of a northwesterly wind. During the overnight hours, it turns a bit northeasterly. So that would act to continue to try to push this fire maybe down this ridge line into this area. And the other thing I noticed is just how insane this topography is in this area. It's amazing that they have some crews working in these kind of conditions with how dry the fuels are, how dense the fuels are. There's some areas that haven't burnt in over 3 decades, so it might as well have not even been burnt ever. And then on top of that, it's been triple-digit heat and exceptionally dry. So incredible work they've been doing. We'll say it does look like we have some aircraft flying over this spot as we speak. And that makes a bit more sense why we were seeing so much aircraft in the area in my last video, because I mean, clearly that part of the fire has flared up, and it now seems like the smoke that we're seeing isn't just from that firing operation. We're also looking at how much smoke was coming off it on this satellite imagery, and it did look like more smoke than what we had in previous days. The other thing that I noticed is the direction that smoke is going seems to be going to the southeast. So that would tell us we have a northwesterly wind. Then when we look at the weather station on the ground, this is Pozo right here. This is the closest weather station I could find. So this isn't model data. This is actually like a station on the ground, has an anemometer, has a thermometer. I've built one of these before when I was getting my master's in meteorology at San Jose State. And when you click in here, it gives you the conditions for today. So we had a high of 97 degrees, exceptionally hot, minimum relative humidity 14%. The reason that's a very low number, and the reason that's important is because the drier it is, the more moisture it pulls out of the fuels, and then the more moisture it pulls out of the fuels, the easier it is for a burning ember to start a new spot fire. And then also just the easier it is for a fire just to spread in general. So the hot, dry conditions definitely contributed to the spot fire that we're seeing potentially right now. I believe that is the spot that we're looking at. And then the fact that it's northwesterly would tell us that the fire would be trying to move southeasterly. So your wind's coming from the northwest, that would try to push the fire to the southeast. So then the question there would be, what kind of structures do we have in this area? So it seems like that spot, it'd be easier if we just have the fire perimeter on. Seems like the spot is right about there. Let's see if we have any structures right around here, which would be our concern. So putting on the structures, I mean, we do have High Mountain Road down to the south right here. So, oh, I think this, hard to tell. I thought that was maybe the spot showing up, but I think that's actually a structure right there. So we do have High Mountain Road down here. That is a bit concerning. I wish the roads didn't pop up when I would click this ruler tool. The spot, guessing, is right about there, about 3.6 miles away. So the next question I'd have is, how strong is this wind that we have right now? Looks like the wind speed from the northwest is around 11 miles per hour, 11 miles per hour with 17 mile per hour gusts. So that is fast enough to move your fire along fairly quickly, especially in dry fuels. And the other indication that we do have moderate wind is the fact that that smoke is moving fairly quickly away from this fire. So what we were originally hoping was that the old information that I had to go off of was this operational update that was about 7 hours ago. And then the fact that they said today firing operations will continue in the Garcia Wilderness to complete that operation. And what we're hoping is that the smoke that we're seeing from this was perhaps the firing operation. So it was good fire, clearing out fuels to actually help with the situation. Now it does seem like there's more of a spot fire, creating maybe some growth that we wouldn't exactly want to be seeing. So this is going to it's going to exaggerate how active the fire is, but I do want to see relatively where we are picking up some heat. And I mean, not a big surprise. It is on that northwestern side. I don't think we have any reason to believe that it's jumped over the Salinas River or where we've had some containment over there. It seems to me, based on the information we have, that the larger concern would be that spot that started almost to the very west of this northwestern tip, and then with the winds having that spot move down towards the High Mountain Road area. So obviously that's probably news that people don't want to be hearing, and I can't confirm that's exactly what's going on, but based on the information that we can collect, that seems to be the case and the concern. With all that being said, because that sounds somewhat dire, they've been working for over a week in these areas, preparing these communities for this exact kind of event. So, I mean, they're well prepared down there. I showed the resources that we have on this fire. There is around 5,000 personnel, 30 helicopters, 382 engines, 157 dozers. When we look at the 3D view, there are all kinds of aircraft, helicopters dropping water, fixed wing aircraft dropping retardant. So we've got a small army on this fire to protect that High Mountain Road area down there. And then I should also mention the northern side of the fire. If we go perimeter only, and then look up to the north, we do have some structures in that area on the other side of the Salinas River. So based on the winds, it doesn't look like the fire is moving up towards the north at this point, and I would say that the fire perimeter seems to be remaining to the south of Avenales Ranch Road and the Salinas River as of right now. Now, the other question mark would be what's going on in the weather forecast. That is finally where some good news comes in. While today was exceptionally hot and dry, looks like Tuesday we're going to see a pretty decent cool down by about 10 to 15 degrees, temperatures back into the 80s, relative humidity not as dry as previous days, so that's going to help firefighters with these conditions. Same with Friday and Saturday. Looks like that cool down is going to continue for at least a couple of days. Says it right here, temperatures will begin to cool after Wednesday with higher minimum relative humidities expected during the afternoon hours. So higher minimum relative humidity means air not as dry, more moisture in the air, means at least a little more moisture in the fuels, which means the fire hopefully would not be moving as fast. So that's kind of the best we can do with the information we have right now. Obviously, it's California. Things move so fast that sometimes you delete a video and record a new one 5 minutes later. So if you watched the old one, sorry for any misinformation that I might have passed along, or incomplete information that I might have passed along, and hopefully this one was helpful. And thanks for watching. And I'll definitely have more updates.